Is an employee referral the best way to get a job? I'm Greg. I'm the Introverted Networker. And today I'm going to talk about employee referrals and whether that's really the way that people get jobs. And it's not controversial in that I think a lot of people would generally say in their own anecdotal experience that getting referred to a position gives you a better chance of getting the job. And so, of course, what we would be talking about here is how does your networking help you get an employee referral? And I've talked about this in past issues. I've talked about it in terms of, skipping the line, or if you're referred, you're preferred. Those are some of the statements I've used in some of my previous podcasts and videos and newsletters, because I personally have experienced the power of employee referrals. I have gotten my last four jobs, I would say, as a result of employee referrals or knowing somebody or having somebody I know working at the place where I went to work. And so for me personally, I haven't gone job searching online, looking for a position and applying online since 2013. So 12 years have gone by since I've applied online for a job. And I'm the introverted networker. So, of course, my point of view on this is employee referrals are the best way to get a job. And at the same time, there's many people who would say, well, okay, but you still got to apply online. People should still be applying online. And I just want to say, I don't disagree with that. I think people still have to apply online. Applying online helps you find what positions are open. And ultimately, whether you get referred or not, you're going to have to go to the job board. You're going to have to find the job posting and click apply and fill out all your information, because you put in your information for the application and that feeds into the HRIS system and then the payroll system. So if you do get the job, you're going to have to go online and put your information in. I think some people take that data and then they look at that data without digging in, and they would say, well, everybody applies online. I mean, most people have to apply online. It's like, well, every hire eventually, or every hire started out as an online application. And it's fine. We don't have to argue or debate that, because I think what most people are saying is it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of searching for a job, finding the job online, applying online, then finding somebody who works there, find somebody who can refer you to somebody who works there, and then that gets you into the interview stage. Once you're in the interview stage, you got to perform, right? You can't just get referred and think, oh, I'm going to get the job. I mean, the referral gets you in the interviews, and then I think, kind of from there, you really got to show you can do the job, right? Because we're not talking about nepotism here, where just because somebody, your family works there, you automatically get the job. What we're talking about is getting a referral, getting the chance to get in front of somebody. And so where the referral helps is it gives you a much better chance of getting into that interview process to show what you can do. Whereas an online application, there could be hundreds of people applying, and they maybe pick 2 or 3 to get interviewed. So your odds through just online applying are a lot lower than through referrals. And the reason why I'm thinking about this week is I saw a comment on LinkedIn from a gentleman named Steve Dalton. And Steve Dalton is a professor at Duke University. He runs their career center, and he wrote a book called The 2-Hour Job Search. And one of the things he talks about in there is how to network, how to get referrals. And Steve comes at this from the standpoint of helping a lot of students, because again, he's running a career center at a university, but he also thinks about it more broadly than that. And he, in his book, and again, the 2-hour job search doesn't mean you're only going to spend 2 hours. Like, let's clear that up. And by the way, I recommend this book for anybody who's searching for a job. You need to get this book and read it. It's not a long read. It's very instructive. It's very step-by-step, and it tells you exactly what to do. So I highly recommend this book. And please don't take this as me arguing with Professor Dalton. I share a lot of common ground with him, I think, in terms of our ideas, very similar ideas, to be honest. And I didn't know about the 2-hour job search book when I started writing about networking and talking about networking and kind of putting my own steps together. But then I found it down the road and I was like, oh, a lot of this is really similar, which you could say like, oh, well, somebody else has that idea. But for me, it's validating. It's validating that I'm not the only person that has thought of networking through this lens. So what Steve Dalton talks about in his book, The 2-Hour Job Search, is creating what he calls the LAMP list. And the LAMP list is similar to our target company list that we talk about. Actually, the first part of LAMP, and LAMP is an acronym. So it's, list. The acronym is, do you have a list of people that you can put down in terms of target companies, right? So that's the companies you want to work for. That's actually a target company list. And so totally the same there. What companies are you interested in working for? And then the next things in the acronym are alumni, motivation, and posting. So once you have that list of companies, then you think of who are the alumni that you went to your school. So again, he's talking about this from a career center point of view. So he would say, once you have that list, find out which alumni from your school work at those companies. And then you're going to reach out to those people and talk to them and do informational interviews, which again, it's total standard common job search practice. You're going to do the informational interviews to find out and learn more. Then you're going to, use your LAMP list to say, how motivated are you to work at those companies? And then you're going to take, based on the companies you're interested in, the alumni that work there, the results of those interviews, how much do you really want to work there? You're going to look and see if they have any postings. And if they do have postings for a job you'd like to interview for, then you kind of reach back out to those people who you connected with and say like, hey, I enjoyed our informational conversation, informational interview. I really want to work here. I found this posting I'm really interested in. Would you be interested in, helping me get referred or who can I talk to? So an excellent way to try to network your way into companies. And so, again, nothing different or new here. It's just a little bit of a different spin. What prompted me to really want to talk about this was he posted on LinkedIn. I follow him on LinkedIn about if you had two people who were searching for a job and they were both spending 90 minutes a day on it, and one person started by applying online and then spent the balance of their time networking, right? So let's assume they applied online for an hour and then they had 30 minutes to network. And you had another person who spent most of their time networking and then the balance applying online. If in a month they did that every day, who would be closer to getting a job? And he didn't have an answer. It was a hypothetical he put out there, but it generated some discussion. And so, again, my point of view is I would tell people to start networking first and then apply, because a lot of times you can get sucked into applying for a lot of jobs that maybe you're not right for. Maybe you're not even going to want to work there. If you spend time talking to people, networking, you might be able to pinpoint the roles to apply to instead of a lot more. So I would say it's a better use of your time. You're going to move faster through the process if you network first and then you apply later. If you've done all your networking, you've done your outreach, and again, you're not going to send 100 emails in 90 minutes. You're going to send a few emails. You're going to respond to emails. You're going to maybe have some conversations on the phone, and try to identify people at your target companies who can tell you what it's like to work there. And you can also start to develop that relationship with them by listening to what they're working on and what projects they're working on, and thinking of ideas or advice or recommendations that you could give them. And then, they're going to be more willing to help you out when you help them. So same sort of approach, but I would argue start with networking and then apply online. And so in the comments, it was interesting because some people were like, well, there was another person who commented that said, neither one really works very well. And he wasn't, and really what he said is people try to connect with 5 or 10 people. It doesn't work as well as they thought. And so then they say networking doesn't work. And I agree with that. I agree most people are networking the wrong way. Most people don't know how to approach this. And they're not approaching this from the standpoint of getting to know people. They're just approaching it from like, hey, can you get me a job? And so people don't like to be put in that position. People don't just say, yeah, sure, I'll help you get a job. They might not even know you. It might be the first time you're talking to them. And you think people don't do that. But I mean, I get LinkedIn messages all the time from people going, hey, do you have any jobs for me? I'm like, I don't even know who you are. No, I mean, I'm not going to spend time responding to that. So if you're coming at this from that standpoint, thinking you're just going to send a bunch of cold emails and ask people for jobs and it's going to work, it's not. And that's not networking, and that's not how it should be done. And if people are doing it that way and it's not working, and there's then saying networking doesn't work, it's because they're not doing it right. Uh, I think most of you are listening to this or reading the newsletter. You understand what it means to really network, or you're learning as you're sort of reading the content. But in one of the comments, Steve Dalton said, "Hey, here's a study that was the Federal Reserve Bank in New York did a study of one company's referral program, and they really dug in and tried to dig into where hires came from." And this is, like I said, it's a hard thing to figure out because everybody comes through the applicant tracking system. So if you just said, well, where did they find the job? Well, of course they saw it online and they applied online, because even if you were referred, you had to do that. So you have to really, really get into asking the person, asking the recruiter, asking the hiring manager, where did you find this candidate? And so they did this at this one company, and they wanted to see, do more hires come from referrals or from online sources, online applications. And so they did a study. It was, again, more, I would say, research oriented, and they tried to control for things. And so it wasn't just some company who's trying to sell referral programs doing this. So they really wanted to see it. And what they found was that in this company, 60% of the applicants came from a job board, and only 6% came from referrals. So a very low number of people came from referrals. But what they found is that then about 40% of those people who applied to a job board got interviews, and 20% of the referrals, not 20% got interviews, but 20% of the interviews were from referrals, right? So again, I'm not saying that the odds are 20%. I'm saying that of all the applicants, right, of all the interviews, right, 40% came from job boards and 20% came from referrals. So if only 6% of the applicants are referrals, but 20% are getting interviews, you have a better chance of getting an interview statistically if you come through a referral. And then when it got to hiring, like 27%, 26% of the offers came from referrals, and only like 24% came from job boards. So again, if you're a referral doing this, there's fewer people you're competing with, and you have a better chance as a referral to get an offer than coming through a job board. And that's matching up, even, right? I mean, what I'm saying is, like, that's not even taking into account the smaller number of referrals. That's just saying of all the offers, more of them came from referrals than from job boards. And then if you get to actual hires, people who accepted the job and started, it goes up even more to like 29% of the hires were from referrals. So almost a third of the hires at this company came from referrals. So you can see, and again, this is one company, and you could argue not every company is the same, but this is just some research that shows in this one company over a period of time, over a certain number of hires, almost a third of them came from referrals and less came from the job board. So what you would conclude is if you can get referred into an organization, you have a better shot of getting hired. That's what the point of this was. Now, we can certainly argue about all sorts of, different ways to cut this, or different, counter arguments for this. But I think we all kind of intuitively know through our own experience, and then kind of through this one study. And this study is, there's some other studies. I found another study in in Europe. It was actually in Germany, a German grocery store chain that was similar in terms of these kind of findings, and also was more focused on turnover, which meant people who are referred tend to stay longer than people who are coming off a job board. So they're somebody who's going to be retained longer with the organization if they're a referral. So there's a lot of upsides to being a referral. A lot of upsides for companies too, right? I mean, this is more about where should companies spend their time? Should they spend more time on referrals and getting their employees to bring in referrals, because they tend to be the people we hire and they tend to stay longer, and they tend to be people who, kind of get ramped up and assimilate in to the organization more quickly. So those are some of the findings from that study. And so I appreciated getting that, because I hadn't seen that study before, and it kind of confirms, some of what I think. And, again, we're always looking for confirming evidence. And I acknowledge, again, there's probably other people who say, it's not true, or it's overstated, or you don't need to network. I guess what I would say is networking is never going to hurt you in a job search. It's not going to give you any less chance of getting the job, unless you're a jerk. And when people talk to you, they're like, yeah, I don't want to hire that person. But they would have pretty much figured that out in the interview. Or if they hired you and you were a jerk, then they would probably be like, oh, wow, that was a mistake. Let's get rid of this person. So if you're a genuine good person which is 99% of people out there, networking is never going to hurt you. And I would say most people aren't doing enough of it. So you need to be focused on doing more of it. And back to the comment that spurred this, you should start with your networking. And if you only have 90 minutes or 120 minutes a day, make 2/3 or 3/4 of that time networking, and then spend the rest of the time applying online. You do have to do both, but I would say you need to spend more time on networking. You'll get farther faster, and you'll find better opportunities if you network. So that's my point of view. Some other good resources that, of course, I'll link to the study. I'll link to Steve Dalton's book. Again, I highly recommend it. You should be reading it. And, take that for what it's worth. If you're out there job searching, really put an emphasis on the referrals this week and trying to meet people who can refer you into jobs. So have a great week. Go out, meet some interesting people. And remember, always be connecting.